What's up, everybody, and welcome to episode 3 of Recemporium. This is a series where I watch any anime that you recommend to me and I make a video on it. Recommendations are still open, so if you have something you want me to watch and make a video on, go ahead and recommend it down in the comments. So today's recommendation comes from Shikabu. They recommended a short called Ojiisan No Lamp, or Grandfather's Lamp. So this is a short that came out of the 2010 Young Animator Training Project. I believe it was a series to train and give spotlight to some young animators, and there were 4 shorts produced in total, each one 23 minutes with an OP and ED, so the length of one typical episode. And so supposedly, I believe, this one won the competition, I guess. So this was the best short to come out of there. And so this short, I'm gonna do a little summary about it because probably a lot of people haven't seen it, so that you know what I'm talking about when I start talking about it. But there's also a link to the short in the description. You can find it on YouTube. I highly recommend watching it because it's, like I said, it's only 23 minutes, and I think it's definitely worth the time. But anyway, this short starts with a young kid playing in his grandpa's attic when he finds a lamp in the attic. Right, like his grandpa's old lamp. And the grandpa's like, oh, don't play with that. And then the grandpa starts telling the kid a story from 50 years in the past about the grandpa's life growing up. And so the grandpa was growing up in the country. He's just a little kid growing up in the countryside. And he does a lot of odd jobs to make money here and there. So it's just him doing odd jobs and stuff. He's working for this store lady making sandals. Eventually one day he has a little job where he's helping this dude move out something into the city. And in the city it starts getting dark and they turn on all of these lamps. And this kid has never seen lamps before. But he's like, whoa, these are so cool, because this little kid is all about westernization and progress and the future and stuff like that. So he's like, wow, these lamps are so cool. So he goes to try to buy a lamp, but he doesn't have nearly enough money to actually purchase a lamp. So he's like, oh, can I buy it wholesale? And the guy's like, the lamp seller's like, I can only sell it to you wholesale if you're planning on selling the lamps. He's like, I'll do it. I'll start selling lamps. And the guy's like, yeah, okay, yeah, sure. But he's nice and here, I'll tell you what, I'll sell you this first one super cheap, and you can just pay me back after you sell it, right? So the kid takes his lamp and goes back to his little village in the country and convinces the shop owner that he's working for to sell it. And they sell it and get 3 more orders. So he goes back to the city. He's like, I need 3 more lamps. And so then this kid starts growing up and becoming the big lamp seller in his countryside, and he's selling to his village and the next town over, and the dude's making a killing off of selling lamps. And so he's bringing his whole village and everything into the new age with light and stuff. So now they all have lamps and everybody loves it. It's cool. The dude gets married, he has a family, he has this nice lamp selling business. It's all great. Lamps are great. Eventually one day he goes back into the city he always does to buy his lamps and everything, when he notices these weird things now hanging from the ceilings, and they're electric lamps. Oh, and he also notices people putting up power lines and stuff through the city. And he's like, oh, what's this? And then they turn on by themselves, and it's like, oh, it's the new kind of lamp. It's an electric light. Woo, fancy. And the dude's not having this. It kind of freaks him out, because now he's a lamp seller. His whole life has been dedicated to selling lamps and stuff. And now there's this new fancy thing coming out that's making lamps obsolete. So he goes back to the village and pretends oh, it's all fine, he ignores it, until the village chief is saying this, they have the opportunity to get this kind of electricity and these lights within about a year. And he's like, no, we don't want that. That'll be bad. So he goes around trying to convince all the villagers not to give into this electricity, because of course he's going to lose business because his whole life is lamps. He's going to lose his whole livelihood. But eventually they end up taking the electricity anyway, so he loses. And so now he's not really selling as much lamps anymore. Everybody has electricity, and he's mad and he hates it and he gets super angry. And then he's like, oh, I'm going to show the chief. And he goes to try to attempt to burn down something. So he's trying to start a fire with this really, really old antique fire starter. And he's like, oh my god, this thing doesn't work. Why does old technology always fail you when you need it? Then he has this big epiphany, wait a second. Right now, I'm still trying to hold on to old technology instead of embracing the new stuff that I'm all about. Whoa, I'm a hypocrite. And then he's like, electricity is okay now, and he gives up the lamp business, and that pretty much ends the story that he's telling to his grandson, and then that pretty much ends the short. So that's like a general summary. And it's a very, very well done short. The animation is in a very traditional style. It matches incredibly well with the countryside feeling. It looks really, really pretty. It's incredibly well done. And so the main message that this short is trying to get across is the whole progress thing. In a way, it can be taken like at the surface. It can be taken as showing the difficulty of, I guess, old timers or adults and older people giving up what they've grown up with and like what they're used to embrace change and embrace new things. But I think if you look a little bit further than that, it can really just be a story about how one can go back on his ideals once his livelihood is challenged. Because this kid is like all about westernization and progress, and that's why he like gets into lamps, because it's cool and it's western and all that kind of stuff. And then he like makes his life about like this whole progress thing. But then when there's more progress that challenges like his livelihood and his notion and like what he's used to, he turns back on that ideal until he realizes what he's doing, and it's like, oh wait, this isn't me, this isn't what I'm about. And it's a really cool message in that regard, and I think it gets that message across really well. But here's kind of my problem with shorts in general, is that shorts are really good at getting across like one message, like one central theme and message that it wants to convey. And shorts tend to fall when they try to like also put in a cool story and characters and all that, because in the small time frame that we have, and this one is 30 minutes, so it's a little bit longer than most shorts. So it puts in a little bit of men's better than a lot do. But it's like, I don't really have that much time to really care or understand these characters or care about the story or whatever world and stuff. But this one does a really good job of like getting its central theme across. The issue is that there's also a pretty interesting story, like just with this guy. Like, I would like to care about this guy more, but I just didn't feel like I had time to. And so that's my problem with shorts. Like, I usually don't relate to them or enjoy them as well, because it was super solid, but like, I'm not so sure it's going to stick with me or I'm going to think about it very much going into the future. And I definitely feel like this could have really benefited from being a full-length movie, because it could have slowed down the pacing. We could have gotten to know the guy more, like really get like into him more, so that when all these lights are coming on, instead of like immediately recognizing that it's, oh wow, it's just a thing about progress and stuff, and now like you can 100% tell he's gonna reject the new lights in favor of his old lamps, and that's exactly what it's gonna be about. It's very predictable. Instead, we could have a chance to like get invested in this guy and like his life and what he's doing, so that these lights come and we're like, no, these lights can't come, because like we need to keep peddling lamps, like that's his thing. Like we're not really rooting for him. We immediately recognize his flaws and all the issues, and that makes it difficult to really get in his shoes as the short goes on. Instead of like if it was a full thing, we can really understand him and feel what he's feeling, and then like it could challenge us at the same time. Instead, we're just seeing him get challenged, and it's too fast. It's also very fast paced in general. And then like towards the ending, when he's like gonna burn down this shed just because lights came, like that's like super over. It felt really over dramatic. Whereas the rest of the short was very, very grounded. It suddenly got super over dramatic, and then once he realizes this, he like gets rid of his lamp business by hanging all the lamps in trees and then like throwing rocks at them to break them, and it all just felt like kind of out there and over dramatic. And maybe it works for some people. It just didn't work for me, because I guess I just wasn't that invested. Maybe it was full length and like I could feel his anger and frustration more, then I could believe that happening. But as it stood, it was just too much for me. And so it's really just an issue of it being a short, though. And me just not liking shorts that much for that reason. I just have a hard time getting invested. But for being a short, and for that central message that's trying to get across, the letting go, embracing new ideas, or sticking to your ideals in spite of them being challenged and that kind of stuff. I thought that was very, very well done. And so I definitely think this short is definitely worth checking out, especially if you get involved with characters and stuff a lot more easily than I do. I think you can really enjoy it. So I thought it was super, super solid. I definitely recommend you check it out, especially since, like I said, it's half an hour. But yeah, so thank you very much for this recommendation. Like the video, comment on the video if you want to talk about it, or if you want to recommend me something else. Subscribe because I have a lot of recommendation videos to go through. Follow me on Twitter if you want to hear me tweet about random garbage. And thank you guys very much for watching.